And now we're recording. And what's up, everybody? I'm Judge James. This is Living for Crits. It's just me tonight. Judge Evie just got home from a audition, and because she was doing said audition, I wasn't sure when she was getting home. She just got in, but at this point, I've already put kind of a show together for tonight. So yins are stuck with me, and I apologize here. So I apologize. So yeah, so there we go. So sorry about last week too. We had Empire of the Cyclops Con last week. There were all kinds of events during that, especially on Sunday. So I wasn't really available to do the show, and I put a thing out on Twitter for that, and I probably should have given more notice for that. And I do apologize there as well. Yeah, Greg, thanks so much. I hope her audition went well as well. It's for like one of the local theater things. It's not through the school, because as a lot of folks know, Judge Evie is a big theater kid, big theater geek, and she does different productions that are through the high school throughout the year, but she also does a couple community productions. So that's what this one is. This is a community production. So I don't know if her getting home now is a good thing or it's a bad thing, but I guess we'll find out. I will note that there are no Judge Evie Presides questions. Of course, if there are questions that come up during the show, I will answer them, but I didn't have access to her questions. So I don't know what came in. So we'll cover questions next week, and we'll do that. The only news I have is that last week, and Greg sent a rap. Greg, I will not do a rap without Evie here, that's for sure. The only news I have is that I hope everyone had a really good time at Empire of the Cyclops Con. I have to say, I was really hoping for a relaxing convention weekend. That was my goal. I looked forward to this for several months, and I was exhausted by the end of it for several reasons. The first was, I chose to run two events, and I ran them on Saturday and Sunday morning at 8 a.m. starts, and that's no big deal. I run 8 a.m. games pretty frequently, but I also had, essentially signed up or signed in to help Goodman Games with the X-Crawl Classics event with the Empire Sports 1 shows. I hope those of you that watched that enjoyed those. Those were definitely kind of an experiment to see how that worked. And hats off to all the technical folks that actually produce sports shows. It is much harder than I thought it would be. Although having real statistics and stuff is awesome, and I think it definitely helps with doing sports stuff. Whereas having a real show about a fake game, that's more challenging. The other thing was, if you didn't know, my dad had open heart surgery the Friday before Empire of the Cyclops Con. Actually, the Friday of the con, because the con was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So that Friday, I was at the hospital all day with my mom and waiting to see how we took him to the hospital, waiting to see how he turned out. And he's good. My dad's in great shape. If you're watching, Dad, please, take a break, chill, stop getting on your computer and everything. He's not really good for being having his chest cracked open just a week ago. He's walking around and stuff, which I guess they make you do that the day after. But he's in good shape. But that stress of those things, man, I was zonked. I was just blasted. So I have no gaming this weekend, and I didn't have any gaming this week. I don't game again until Wednesday when I return to a Mothership adventure. We're playing through Bloom, and I'm a player. I'm not a DM or GM or judge or warden. It's called warden in that game. I'm not doing any of that crap. I'm just playing as Alistair the android. So that's that. Anyway, so if you do have questions to send in for next week's show, send them to dccjudgeev@gmail.com. And we're going to move into the topic for tonight, which effectively I think will be maybe one of the last things we have to say on this topic. But this summer I was doing the daily vlog for about a month. I did it for a little over a month, and during the vlog I had kind of shared how I wanted to give a real try to D&D 5th edition. And this is kind of the second time I've done this, because a couple years ago we tried D&D 5e. We played it 2 times, and I didn't like it. So I gave away the books that I got. I didn't have that much. Well, this time's a bit different, because I went and picked up quite a bit of D&D 5th edition, and I really wanted to make a go of this. I really wanted to try it and give it a real test. So I had a campaign, and I delved through all the Talus lore to run the Monte Games Talus 5e campaign, and I really, really tried this time to understand 5th edition and to see if this was going to be something that I could do. And we got 7 games into a campaign, and turns out, no, I really don't like D&D 5th edition. So all the time I give Evie crap for wanting to try it. I guess I'm glad she didn't get into it. But at this moment, of the stuff that I bought, the only thing I kept was a single player's handbook and all of the stuff that's the Monte Cook Games 5e stuff. I think Jen's contractually obligated to keep that since she works for MCG. I mean, you never know when she's going to need that stuff. I know that she was in a Planebreaker demo. Planebreaker is the new D&D 5e setting book that Monte Cook Games is putting out. They're kickstarting it right now. I'll get to that in a second. But she played it, so she needed a character. So, she had the book. She played a bard because, of course, she did. So I thought that tonight, because this always makes for a fun dialogue, I'd go into what I liked and didn't like about 5th edition after playing 7 sessions of it, and what kind of steered me away. What was the straw that broke the camel's back for me? And what I liked was the players that it drew in. I was able to play with a really good group of friends, and a couple of which I think I was able to lure them in with a 5e, message that, hey, I'm going to run 5e, so let's play together. So we did, 7 sessions. They were on Saturdays. They were early. It was like 9 a.m. to noon. And I ran a series of adventures that were, some were published, and some were just generated with the material located in the Talus core book. So in the Talus book for 5e, there's information about the sewers and the rat men in the sewers and everything. So I was able to use that for one adventure. Then I hijacked an adventure called The Lady Rose out of an old dungeon magazine and tried to convert that. That was my conversion experiment. And then I ran, I don't remember which Goodman Games 5e 5th edition fantasy adventure it was, but I did run one of those. It was the one with the orc on the cover that has like a patch over his eye. So I ran that one also, and I strung them together into a mini campaign. And so I liked the players that I was able to get together, and I did enjoy some of the story that came out of the players building their characters. That was fun to see how they backed in their plot lines, their storylines into each of the builds that they picked. We had a Minotaur Barbarian, a human Warlock, a half-elf Cleric, a Dwarf Wizard, and a what was it called? It was began with a T. It was like the Tiger Man or the Cat Man. I keep thinking it's a Kilrathi. I know it's a Latorian monk. So do I have tea? Wow, I'm getting tea, even though I'm Jen or even here. Thank you. What kind of tea is this?
Just regular with honey.
Just regular with honey. Thank you.
Oh.
Appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Ridley, you coming on air? You gonna come over? No, you're not coming over? Maybe? Ridley's thinking about coming over. Here we go. Hey, there he is. What's up? Ridley did not play in the 5e campaign. Greg, so he avoided it for years, is now playing Esper Genesis, a third-party hack of 5e. And if you're having a great time, that's awesome. I gotta say, I still want to really take the moment to I'm not trying to dwell into an edition wars zone here. And I know that in previous years I've been pretty vocal about my issues with it, and my issues really primarily have always been more about the business practices of Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast, and less about the substance of the mechanics. But I really do feel like I can comfortably say that the mechanics are not for me. So just a few of the things that I had issues with, for a game that's supposed to be less crunchy than Pathfinder, because that's what people told me. I'm going to keep rubbing Ridley here. He's like, no, he's just chill. It was way too much crunch for me. and it felt like homework having to build encounters and having to balance encounters. I've said this before, and I'm going to say this again. Uh, every good GM, judge, DM balances their encounters. The folks that say they don't, I believe, are lying, or or I don't know, or just aren't thinking that they're doing it. They don't realize they're doing it. We all balance our encounters. We all look at, is that too much or throwing against the party or not? I think that there are definitely those people out there that don't care if the encounter is balanced, but balancing it doesn't mean you have to make it even, But I think a good GM worth their salt is going to know what their party can handle and what they can't. To make encounters, a decent challenge. I had a really hard time with this mechanic and with the whole mechanic about encounter balance. And it's not about it wasn't about creating encounters where the party would have to decide to flee or not. Or I didn't know if I was overcommitting or undercommitting when I was creating creatures. And I'll give you a hint. The biggest problem, a tip. I'll give you a clue into my brain issues here. The thing I had the hardest time with 5th edition was I had no friggin' idea for a lot of the time what the player characters were capable of. I felt like every player character had, we're talking like at 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th level, that's what we spanned. We jumped pretty quickly. I felt like they all had a lot to do every round, and they were pulling all kinds of crazy crap out. For instance, the Warlock, who was awesome. The Warlock character. I will never forget Widry, the Warlock. This packed blade thing going on, and or hex blade thing, whatever it was. If his Warlock, he only had a couple spells he could cast, but he had these things up, like these incantations or whatever, where if something hit him, it took damage. And then he could cause damage. And if he was hit, he could barf flame on somebody. So all these things. So I didn't know, was he a glass cannon build? Was he really tough to beat build? Like, I didn't know how that character was built well enough to really balance an encounter against him. And I had a pretty balanced party. And when I tried to read the DMG and figure it out, like maybe a better way to do it or the mathematics of it, it didn't seem so clear to me. When you go into some more of the old school games or the games that are more of a simpler design, so I'm going to call, everyone knows that like my brain resets to Dungeon Crawl Classics. I definitely left 5e truly believing like this is the greatest fantasy role-playing game ever made. I am now firmly in my belief system that is the game of games. Even though I know it's really a 3rd edition hack. I know it's a hack of like 3rd edition D&D with a lot of the old school BX stuff thrown in there, or Beckamy thrown in there. Since you have shorter stat blocks in the old school gaming, especially in DCC, I feel like crafting an encounter has an artistic flavor to it. There's more art to it. You have more control. You're just adding some hit points maybe, or you're adding an attack die, or you're adding very simple things to the encounter. You're not having to keep track of all kinds of stuff going on at once. And even though player characters eventually do get pretty powerful and can throw a second attack in there per round, it doesn't feel, the combat may take longer. It doesn't quite feel as cumbersome to me. So again, this is all about me. I think that if I had spent more time and enjoyed myself more on the mechanics side, or maybe started playing when there was less character options, or maybe started playing with an adventure path or something like that instead of trying to write my own stuff, maybe it would have come more naturally to me. But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to go down the adventure paths. I didn't want to go and do Curse of Strahd, at least not off the bat. So the classes felt a little overwhelming to me. And I just hated getting into combat. Like, I really was glad we only had like one combat encounter per session. And I felt like combat took a long time. And I was, missing the expedience of DCC combat, and not just DCC combat, but some of the other games I play, with the exception of Fantasy Age. I think Fantasy Age can bog down a bit in combat as well. So that was an issue with me. I didn't like combat, and for a game where a lot of the mechanics are built around combat, if I don't like the combat of the game, I'm not going to want to play it. The other thing was I felt like when the combat was moving, it was a little dull. And I think I'm spoiled. I'm spoiled by Dungeon Crawl Classics and having those charts and craziness that can happen every round. Any round, the wizard might max out their magic missile and just create like a nuke storm or something like that. Or any round, the warrior might have an epic fumble, and since they have a crazy fumble die, it's going to really throw the party in a crazy direction. I didn't have that in 5e. I didn't experience that. There was some swing though. Like I remember one encounter where my friend Andy, his monk, was locked down very early in the encounter, and was kind of taken out of the action for a bit. And that of course brings the frustration that always comes with your character being locked out. The other thing that I felt like was a lot of the time I felt like I was, I would be able to play the game more naturally in a different system. And I talked 5e a lot, or DCC a lot, but another system I kept thinking about was, Shadow the Demon Lord. Because if you don't want to play a game that has quite as pared down in the character options as DCC, I mean, this is my second go-to. This is right up there with me with 5e. The only reason I grade a little bit less, I feel like, I'm sorry, with DCC. I agree a little bit less than DCC is the published material, and it's good stuff out there. But I think the DCC modules have a little more pop to them. There's a little bit more in them. Whereas the Demon Lord Adventures, while they're really good, I really like a lot of this, especially that stuff Rob Schwab writes himself. I feel like I have more to go off of with the DCC modules, more to play with. That's a good game for character customization. If you really want a customized character, I think Shadow the Demon Lord does it just as well, if not better than 5e does it. So if you want to play with the customization, there's a game out there already for you. Let's see what is Gordon saying. When I played 5e with only 1 or 2 other players, combat was okay. When we had 7 players, combat was slow and very boring. I'm glad we didn't have more than 5 players. I'd say the one time we had 3 players, which was the last game that I played, it did move faster when it came to combat. I will say that was a benefit to the game. And maybe more experienced DMs wouldn't have a problem with it, but I did. It just it seemed to stifle me and stifle my own creativity at the table. Like I said, I never looked forward to a fight. I always wanted to get around that. The positive, though, I will say, is that because I needed to find a virtual tabletop to use, because I think that 5e needs one for some of the combat, not all the time, but some of the times, many of the times, it turned me on to Owlbear Rodeo, which is now my go-to. And instead of screen sharing maps that have been done by Stefan Pogue or Doug Kovacs, the DCC maps, I can just share it with Owlbear Rodeo and Fog of War the map, and just reveal as the players travel through the dungeon what they're experiencing. So I did have to find a VTT, and I'm glad. It's one of the benefits of playing 5e. I think that the biggest thing I was experiencing while I was playing 5e was I just kept feeling I was returning somewhere I didn't want to go. I felt like it was. I've been there. I've done that. It felt like 4e to me, and I didn't realize how much I didn't want to play 4e again until I started playing 5e, and I felt like those twinges of why I stopped playing D&D altogether around 2013, and why I went and sought out other variants of games. And for me, it was a progression of how I got to games that weren't D&D themselves. I know DCC, it has its roots, but it still is not Dungeons and Dragons. It's a hacked up version and a lot of extra tasty bits added on. But the material itself, the 5th edition material, it did feel a bit watered down to me. I remember reading through the Ravenloft book, and because I always said like Ravenloft, and I was very adamant about this when I got the stuff, and I shared it here, my excitement about Ravenloft. Ravenloft or Dark Sun were the two things that were my favorite aspects of favorite settings in 3rd edition, 2nd edition. You know, I think some of the best Ravenloft materials was everything done by what was it by White Wolf essentially. Was it Art House Studios or Arc House Studio, whatever it was, the 3rd edition Ravenloft stuff that went to real depth about the core of Ravenloft. And when I started digging through the Ravenloft book, the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, it wasn't Ravenloft the way I remembered it. It wasn't bad, but they rebooted the core. It was something different. They took some of the. It just didn't feel. It didn't feel like what I had remembered. So in one way, I didn't want to. I didn't want to go back to that. I also felt like it was unrecognizable to what I had seen before. So that nostalgia wasn't hitting for me. And I know that Dark Sun is being hinted at as a future setting, but what are they going to do to Dark Sun? Like, how will they? Are they going to tackle it the same way? Are they going to just cut the thing up and repaste it together again? You know, I guess one of the things it reminded me of, and I'm going to really go into the '90s here for a second, was what Electronic Arts did with Ultima 9. You know, if you were an Ultima fan in the '90s and you remember all the goodness of like Ultima, 6 and 7 and Serpent Isle and Ultima Underworld, and then you had EA's, barfed out Ultima 9, which was pretty. It was very pretty for the time, but it was glitchy, and it didn't remember the backstory of what it was. And that's how I felt like some of the D&D stuff was. So, again, there's a lot of this has to do with just a matter of taste and what you like to do or don't like to do. But for me, 5e, the second time around was, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I spent the time with it. I'm going to stop rambling. So that's my take. So moving on here. All right, moving on. Kickstarter shout-outs. If you want to, this is going to YouTube, so like at some point. So I'm sure I'm going to get the comments of folks I did it wrong, which is fine. If you think I did it wrong, I 5E'd wrong, okay. That's fine. Maybe if Judge Evie was here, she'd say I did it right, and it just sucked. But that's neither here nor there. All right, so 3 Kickstarters to talk about right now. Three big ones right now. The first one I'm talking about is the Mothership Kickstarter, which is a freaking behemoth. So where is it at right now? Mothership, let's look, Kickstarter. Mothership is exploding. It is $16,000 away, or less than $16,000 away from $1 million, which is incredible. And hats off for them. Especially hats off Jarrett, my friend Jarrett Crater, because I know he's the editor on Mothership, and he is a wonderful human being. And I am very excited just for him to be in a project like this. So that is awesome. But I'm in that one. We've played Mothership here at the house. I've played 2 sessions of Mothership now, and I've loved both of them, and it hits all the right buttons for me. The second Kickstarter, I'm a little nervous for this one, is the Dwarven Forge Reliquaries Kickstarter. Everyone knows I'm a big Dwarven Forge fan. So there's the Reliquaries Kickstarter out there right now, and it's for dice. So I'm not in on this one. I'm going to share it. I'm going to put the link in here. I don't know what I'd use this for. So, but I do love, all the folks at Dwarven Forge. So I wish them the best. But this one's hurting right now. So if you want to take a look at what they've got, I'll put the link in that one. But I know that they haven't hit a stretch goal yet, and they have only less than a week to go. So this will be a tough one for them, I think, if they don't hit those numbers. But give it a look. If you're on the out there shopping for awesome metal dice and for some cool dice displays, then it might be something for you. All right, and the last one is the Monte Games Planebreaker Kickstarter, which is out there for 5e, but it's also out there for Cypher System, or it will be out there for Cypher System. So if you want to get your plane cracking on, there is there is that as well. So I'll post links to all of these below. So lots of Kickstarters going on right now, and there's always, which is always, that's all the time anymore, right? There's always like a trillion Kickstarters. I feel like, there's too many. I don't know. All right, Road Crew shoutouts. I don't have one. I'm going to delete the one I had in there, which is Empire of the Cyclops Con. That one's over. Romance of the Cyclops Con is going to be May 13th, 14th, and 15th, my birthday weekend. So that'll be a good time, and I have no idea what I'll be running. It's 6 months out, right? So I don't have to worry about it or not. I guess we're going to be getting up pretty close to PAX Unplugged, which I haven't done anything for that either. I know Jen's going for work. I'm not even sure if I'm going. I think I might be, but I might not be. And then the other thing is, I guess, Gen Con prep. Am I going to PAX? Greg, I just said, I don't know. Are you going? Greg, are you going to PAX? Convince me. It's a disorganized convention. I mean, I'm getting ready to have, we're going to have another event here in the Dungeon Tavern in the end of January. So what I'm looking the most forward to is we're going to spend a whole weekend in the end of January playing through the Chain Coffin adventure, the Appalachian mythology style, adventure by Michael Curtis for Dungeon Crawl Classics. We're going to do it in 3 days. We got a bunch of people either driving or flying in for that, and we're going to do it right down here at the tavern. So I'm very excited for that weekend, and we'll have a show for that, I'm sure, at the end of it. So I'm looking forward to. Greg's not going to PAX Unplugged because you have a house renovation going on. That's a good answer. It's a good reason why you're not going to PAX Unplugged. But I guess Gen Con prep is coming. I have to think about that for next year. And I'm probably going to Gen Con in 2022. Man, it almost feels like it's around the corner. I know it's a year away. Excuse me. All right, well, that's all I got. So find us on Twitter at I Live for Crits. And I will, you can always search for our crazy content on YouTube, and you can always look to see when I was saying, hey, I'm going to try 5th edition, I'm excited for it, and now you get the video where I'm kind of like poo-pooing it, and oh well, is what it is. I am quite fickle, and I am a little bit mercurial, so I do kind of bounce back and forth in my excitement level, but I will say that it's not like the 5e stuff won't go unused. I got all the 5e stuff that I had purchased, and I took a big stack of it, and we took it right to the high school D&D club so they could use it and have it on their shelves because they needed some stuff. So now they have it. So they have a whole set of everything they need, from, I don't know, the Tasha's book and the Mordenkainen's book and all those things. They have it all, as well as another set of other core books and a screen and some dice. I think that's what they got. All right, so be safe, be healthy, be kind to one another. And my outro ASMR is going to be, see you next week, Judgy.